All right, and we're live. Turn off that.
That was it, right? That was so loud. I was not expecting that.
Yeah. Okay, we're live for our first episode of the Single Pane podcast. I am one co-host, Josh Lee, and I'm joined by
My name is
Mya.
Mya. You can find me with different last names online. We can get into it if we want.
And Mya, what are we here to talk about?
Yeah, mostly we're here to talk about how to make AI work for you and not make you work for your AI.
Yeah. For me, a lot of that is like I want a way to share some information and context about my life and about the world with the AI, but I don't necessarily want to give it access, like direct access to everything. So I almost need like my own copy of things that I can work on with the AI.
You want to also make sure you're like not fetching like private data, things like that. Being kind of like at a company currently that does a lot with like AI platform engineering, like it's been interesting to kind of learn about the different ways to segment and isolate data and kind of make it work for you versus like really spending your time fighting and grinding the wheels, if you will. Grinding your wheels, grinding your gears, whatever you might call it.
Both sound painful. Yeah, so I guess that brings up question number one: why Single Pane? How did we come up with the title for this podcast?
I don't even remember how we got into the title here, right? But we talk a lot about, challenges with data ownership, making sure you can own your own destiny kind of deal. Really kind of wrangling data has always been like the biggest challenge when it comes to, I don't know, I guess kind of like the operationalization of it, right? That's a word. Being able to put it into practice, being able to make the most out of it that you can.
Well, and I think we started talking about this when we first met, and then we ended up giving a talk about this at Open Source Summit, just sort of this concept of consolidation and bringing all of your data into a single pane of glass, if you will. And I think in our talk we highlighted some of the actual pain PIN points in that process that you can encounter.
I also recalled we not once mentioned OpenTelemetry in that talk. Other than in the context of the demo. I was thinking about it.
It was where the data came from. Yes. So the talk, for those who didn't see it or aren't familiar with it, anyone watching this recording, the premise of the talk was that you should consolidate your business analytics, your observability, and your security data streams, because even though the people using those data streams are very different, have different needs, the shape of the data itself and the types of tools that you need and the types of problems that you face when working with that data usually have a lot of overlap. Yeah, and we did pitch it as being a sort of centric around OpenTelemetry, but a lot of our talk was about the processing pipeline and the storage mechanism, ClickHouse, and the visualization tool Grafana that we were using. We had a lot of questions about purses. I think that's an area that people are really interested in. Purses is the dashboarding tool similar to Grafana, but sort of built for the CNCF ecosystem specifically, and kind of exciting in what you can do with like, I'm forgetting the exact term, but it has a system that allows you to basically verify the dashboards statically without loading them. Validate that they're correct. Yeah, so you can. It's an improvement on the GitOps process with like the way the Grafana dashboards work.
And it's not like using JSON or anything like that under the hood. Like that's all templating language kind of deal. It doesn't deal with.
I don't know what the format is, but I'm assuming it's some kind of YAML or something, or JSON. But yeah, it has a validator.
I gotcha. God, I want to dive into that a little bit because I'm not.
I mean, we can spend a whole episode on purses. Maybe we should see if someone from the project wants to come talk with us.
I'm kind of curious about how like it does data validation, make sure like your queries are all right, so on and so forth, right? Like there's a lot of challenge in that, right? Making sure you're looking at the right data. Just because you're looking at something that's called an advertiser ID doesn't necessarily mean you're looking at an advertiser ID. That context changes depending on what system you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think versus in some ways it only supports PromQL at the moment, not other query languages or data sources the way that Sigrifon or other tools might. So maybe that it does simplify reduce the scope of solving those challenges, but there's still a lot of challenges there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's how we came up with the name. Why are we doing this? Why are we talking about this?
Gosh, like I can't tell you how many times I've seen people kind of talk about it on social media, in person, you kind of name it, but there's a lot of challenge in terms of like getting AI to really work for you the best way you can. And even to this day, like I'm still learning a whole bunch. There's a couple of people that I work with that are far more knowledgeable about that landscape than I am. Like I'm very much like a pragmatist in the sense of when I get it to work and it's working well for me for the use case that I'm trying to do. I don't want to deviate too much from it, but with the landscape changing as fast as it is, like I want to make sure that that information is captured somewhere, but then like I can go back and revisit it when I have time, when I have the capacity for like being able to adopt a new tool. But it's really hard to do that when kind of like everything is shifting under your feet as you're walking.
Yeah, definitely. I also hear from a lot of people who are like, I tried AI, it wasn't that useful, and then I stopped using it. And I think what they did is they just went to like ChatGPT, which is a great tool, but it doesn't have all of the context. I've been using it pretty heavily for 2 years, so now it has almost too much context on me, and that context can seep into other things that I'm doing with it. I'm saying the word context a lot. I think that's really important, and like how I've been finding to use these AI tools is you find the right context and the right model, and that's almost more important than the prompt engineering, right? It's context engineering more than prompt engineering. And yeah, that's how I'm finding that I'm getting to actual productive outcomes with these Gen AI tools is when I give them small tasks and enough context. And it's really hard to do that with ChatGPT just because it doesn't have direct access to your stuff. So probably what we'll do in this episode at some point is dive into how I've been using Claude Code, and we can use that to like set up our sample repo for this project that we're going to be building.
Yeah, there's also like tools like Cline that are built into OSX, or not OSX, but VS Code that makes it a whole lot easier for you to kind of get integrated into your editor and have it work across a variety of things there. I like using Cline just because it's got built-in MCP server capabilities, right? We talk about context, and the Claude Code capabilities is very important. Like being able to use like additional context from MCP servers or model context protocol servers is super important, especially in this day and age when you want to be able to source information from, whether it's your production database or from your analytics engine, or even if it was what was the other one that I came across the other day? Like being able to call out to other local ML models running on Olama, right? There's an MCP server for that. I actually wrote one about a month ago, 2 months ago, maybe now, where it's a MCP server that allows you to look up RFCs directly. So if you mention an RFC and say, hey, I want this to be RFC 1232 compliant or something like that, well, now my client instance knows how to take that RFC specification, look for the associated spec, download it, understand it a little bit more, and then apply it live in the code base.
Yeah, those lookup MCPs are just so valuable. Like I use one for NixOS, and all it does is it gives it the ability to search the documentation and the packages library, but that just prevents so many mistakes. And it, giving the MCP the ability to just giving the LLM the ability to just grab the exact context that it needs, really prevents a lot of hallucinations. And
well, and we were even talking about it kind of just before hopping on here, where depending on the editor that you're using, different models will have different results for you, right? Like your mileage may vary. For a good example is like if you're using Cline, a lot of the prompts on Cline's side of the world were built against the Claude Sonnet 3.5 and 3.7 models. And when you try to use Cline with something like Claude Sonnet 4, like it it works, but not nearly as well as it used to work with the 3.7 models. And that's because Claude 4 was really built purposely for the Claude Code side of it. Whereas like Cline really, really needs that 3.5 or 3.7 model for you to be very effective. Cool. Should we get into some, or like
let's start building something. Here, I'll put our background music on in case we're silent while we're typing.
Another thing I think to like really cover too is, you know, like part of the reason we're doing this is to really kind of like take some very simple examples and put it into practice with how you can use these tools to help make your life a little bit better. I demoed a few weeks ago how I used Claude to build something like a little game for me to learn how to read sheet music better, right? And it's like something like that would have probably taken me like a couple of days or a week to like really build it out fully fledged if that was all I was doing. And it took, you know, Claude maybe a couple of hours to really pull something together that worked. Now, it wasn't responsive. It didn't work on mobile. Like there's a lot of like rough edges with it. But in terms of like just being able to get something built out and working with very little effort, it was fairly impressive.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding too, is that those one-shot deployment use cases, it can be super useful. And I think that's part of like the motivation for me to sort of do this podcast and to do the project that we've been talking about, is I want like a stable base on top of which to build these one-shot applications, so that if I'm building one of these and I want to say like give it access to all of the talks that I have, all that talk abstracts that I have, or give it access to my upcoming travel calendar, or give it access to a social media feed or an RSS feed or something like that, I can really easily do that. And I can kind of have these one-shot apps, but then also have not one-shot database, right? Actually, that was interesting. I was writing a blog post for the open source analytics community about all of these recent Postgres acquisitions. And that was really the driving factor, right? Is 80% of Postgres databases created now are being created by AI agents. And so they're just sort of these ephemeral databases being created by the agent for a task.
You're talking about schema, right? Like not like actual databases. Is kind of
like database instances. This was from, I believe this was from one of the serverless vendors that just got acquired by Snowflake. That's where that statistic came from. So yeah, it's the AI agents are just spinning up databases for their tasks and for, you know, ephemeral environments. And yeah, so I want my own database that I own and control and can sort of track and give access to the AIs as needed. So that's we kind of talked about this a little bit before, and we talked about having an MCP almost like for this personal data layer, and I think that's a really interesting concept that we might want to build out. We also talked about a couple of other use cases, right? So what are your use cases? Mine are scraping RSS feeds for interesting things to share, because I curate and share in a lot of places at work and personally. Being aware of upcoming conferences and knowing when the CFPs are due so that I can make sure that I'm submitting to them. Helping me manage and track my actual CFP submissions, so like which abstracts I've submitted where and what the acceptance status is and all that stuff that I'm currently just kind of doing in Google Sheets. And it's nice. It used to all be in Sessionize, right? Everyone kind of moved to Sessionize, and I had it all in one place. And now everyone's kind of splintered off to these various platforms. Pre-talks is awesome, but yeah. So now I need a system again to centrally manage that. What were some other use cases? You had a few.
Yeah, I know you and I talked about the kind of staying on top of conference stuff, because I think that bit us once or twice this year. The other one that I was considering was being able to enhance my resume with some actual like content from talks that I've given in the past, like use kind of things that are more contextually relevant to you know, my employment and the work that I've done, versus kind of relying on AI slop to kind of get me there. And I say AI slop, right? What I really mean there is like relying on the predictive autocomplete feature without giving it proper context around the work that I've done. We talk about AI hallucinations, right? Like it's generated lines for me that I'm just like, nope, I didn't do that work. And so I'm not comfortable including that. And so just really tuning it in and dialing it in. The other couple
Yeah.
of use cases that I've had, right, like trying to relocate to either Denver and Washington and wanting to pull some statistics and some real estate information for there, just to help me make a more informed decision without needing to go and manually crawl all those components. And then
So that might be a situation where you do have an ephemeral database, because something like apartment listings is going to go stale very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But you still want it to have like a validated and verifiable structure that you can go check and make sure that the AI is not just hallucinating. Or like I had one instance where I was using Claude Code and it just generated some JSON instead of actually scraping the web pages I was telling it to scrape. And yeah.
Right. And I think like for something like that, right, like doing a snapshot and store that data in a database, very, very reasonable. Kind of using that AI coding tool to help kind of arrive to the database schema. I've also used and done that in the past. Places where I find like AI works really well is like when there's a pre-established pattern for being able to go through and implement a feature, like works really well for AI, because you can kind of show it like, you know, given this pull request or given this merge commit, like use that as a reference and apply it for this other component. I can talk a little bit about like the dot context project that my friend had worked on that helps you kind of precede your LLM with further context that is necessary for it to be effective. We use this at my current day job where we need to make changes across 3 repositories when we're adding a new component. And so being able to use AI to just automatically create these 3 different components and then have those pull requests all opened up makes life a whole lot easier. And so the last use case that I really had for it, beyond kind of like resume data or polishing and relocation for myself, was come on brain. Analyzing like telemetry data. I've been toying around with that a lot, where like I talk about kind of data discovery being a big challenge when you join a new company, figuring out where information is all stored and located. And so I've been really trying to use AI to help explore data sets a lot more. I saw this problem, big companies, small companies, you name it, and being able to have a tool that can kind of quickly understand and grok the schemas, and then being able to kind of like navigate me in the right direction of here's where you should look for this type of data has been super useful. And then being able to use that as an interactive element to construct SQL queries. I've actually done this on a project or two where I took kind of like your simple rudimentary ClickHouse query of like, hey, give me all the data points within this time frame, group by day, go kind of deal. Well, that works all great, except then you end up with gaps between like days if you don't have any data points come in on a day, right? Well, that's something that AI was able to help me with, where it was able to help fill in the gaps between the days where we had no data, right? And so like that used features that I was completely unaware of with ClickHouse, but it wound up working out pretty well. We got some pretty robust queries in place that run pretty quick. And I don't have to worry all that much about it. It's integrated into my product directly. I don't have to, really don't have to think twice. And that was just a simple iteration of like go from start to kind of the next step. I will note, because I was just trying to pull it up, I can't access Cline in the live share that we have.
Oh, that's okay. I'll drive. We can start with Claude. We'll start with how I use Claude, and maybe ask Claude to help us plan out what order we should do some of these other things, because that's something I've really been enjoying with Claude Code is the planning mode. Okay. So here, let's make this bigger. So I'm just in an empty directory, right? There's nothing here yet. And I have 2 tools installed on my system that we're going to be leveraging, and then everything else will use one of those 2 tools. So I have Claude, and I have DevBox, which is a wrapper for Nix. The Nix package manager makes it really, really easy to install stuff and like create a shell specifically for this project. And I like to use these 2 tools in conjunction, because then I end up with basically 2 files, a Claude Markdown file and a devbox.json that define everything I need to work with the project. And I can also have Claude install things directly into DevBox so that I know that it's not installing things just like willy-nilly across my system. Because I have given Claude pretty broad access to my system and pretty broad permissions to do what it needs to do. And I sort of just try to manage that through context. So the first thing we can do is just do Claude. And yes, that's okay. We trust this folder. We're going to do /init. And it's going to generate its own instructions file. Usually, if you had actual code base, right, it would be analyzing the code base here and making architecture notes for itself for future sessions. And basically what this step would do is that way it doesn't have to use tokens reading your entire code base again every time that you use it. It has this sort of nice compacted markdown file that's maybe a couple hundred lines that contains the architecture and important information about your code base. All right, so it's confused because it can't find anything. And so it wants to just list everything in the project root. So I'm just going to tell it, no, there's nothing here. So there's nothing here yet. You are a existing.
Ooh, so this is something you don't have to do. Because of the way that Claude was written, you actually don't need to kind of like give it the, what do you call it? The role.
Oh yeah. Okay. So, but I want it to get. I want it to have a little bit of a personality. So, use the following context for your. Oh, I can't do line breaks. Okay, that's annoying.
Yeah.
Working with 2 podcast hosts who are fairly experienced DevOps professionals. You should provide pushback when you think you are right. Don't just agree. Your goal is to build simple solutions suitable demonstrations. Let's see what it comes up with. All right, it understands. All right, so what did it write? This file provides guidance to Claude Code when working with code in this repository. This repository is used for demonstration projects, for DevOps projects, simple, clear solutions, working style, provide technical pushback, prioritize simplicity, focus on DevOps best practices, explain architectural decisions. Yeah, this is pretty good.
Yeah. Seems decent. I did help.
Yeah. I think we can add more to this as we sort of refine the requirements for our various projects, but this is a great starting point. So yeah,
well,
go ahead.
The other thing you can do is like, as you're iterating on the project, you can actually tell Claude Code to go back and like re-index the repo and update it with kind of its working knowledge of it.
Yeah. And you can also use this. So, oh no, not bang. What is the command? There's one, yeah, hash. So this will actually tell it to memorize something, which it does by writing it in that markdown file. Oh, so actually we could do this, right? Like, remember to always DevBox for installing project.
Yep. And so it can either add it to your project context or your root context for your entire machine.
Yeah.
So if there's a difference between like your coding style versus like the company's coding style, or what was another one that I came across recently? There was something I wanted applied to every repo I wanted, every repo I touched, but there were things that were specific to like our UI project that I needed to deal with.
All right. I had to start a new session because I was having tmux and that was annoying. So now I'm in tmux. We can look at the file. So what did it add? Oh, it added it here, common development patterns. Yeah, perfect. Okay. All right. So now I think we want to ask it for a plan, right? So I'm going to put it in planning mode.
Yeah, I generally tell people that they should always start in plan, even if they know
Yeah.
exactly what they want it to do, or you give
Yeah.
it like a really well specified prompt. Starting in plan is usually
I'm not
like the
able to.
best course of action.
Isn't it Option Tab to enter planning mode?
That's a good question. I don't actually even think I have Claude Code on this computer yet.
Code planning mode. How do I do this? Shift tab twice. Ah, there we go. You have to, it's Shift tab in its completeness twice, not Shift tab tab. Ah, okay. Computer's got to be finicky, right? Okay. Let's make this. Oops. Where did I see that? Oh boy. Okay. Let's do this. Okay. So we want to make a plan. What's the first thing we want to build? The RSS scraper, the database? Do we want to describe the whole project and let Claude decide?
The thing that's like most useful, top of mind for me right now is very much the event scraper and notification system for when like things are due and whatnot.
Okay. Our first project will be a Python application and scrape pages and RSS feeds. See it.
Have you ever used like a draft.md file or a plan.md file to like give it a more long-winded example?
Prompt? Yeah.
Yeah.
I have. What I've been doing lately has been making it generate those for me too, and then I use that as a starting point and I edit. So we'll see. What I was going to do is see what it comes up with from this little prompt, and then maybe turn that into like a larger prompt or architecture like plan. Make a plan.
I find I have to go past kind of like the V0, if you will.
Yeah.
I have to kind of go a bit past that before I can actually get something useful to get generated.
Yeah. Let's see if it actually gets something useful. I did spend, like, it took me several hours when I was trying this for a newsletter project last week. So maybe there's value in doing a little more upfront work. Oh, okay, cool. So it's going to research common CFP websites and for me. I thought I was going to have to do that. That's cool.
No, it's pretty good about that kind of stuff. Like even when I was doing my real estate example, I think like a week ago, I was telling it like, hey, I want to pull some of this. And if we can pull from MLS systems, great, but scraping is also okay. So it gave me some pretty decent options.
Okay. And it's going to output a calendar. That's pretty much what I asked for.
I like
the architecture plan.
It is going off 2024. So that's the other thing to kind of be cognizant of, right? Like when you're using some of this, right? Like you're not necessarily using like this year's version. So make sure that you're kind of checking it against like, hey, like, using it as a starting point is probably okay. But longer term, you want to make sure you're also pulling for something that's in 2025.
Yeah. But I think that's something that we're going to hopefully catch by doing these small iterations, right? Like we're having it give us small deliverables rather than building on its own deliverables. And we're going to review each small deliverable before it builds on it, hopefully, unless it just decides to roll with this. But it shouldn't, it's in plan mode. We're going to need much more interesting elevator music if we're waiting for LLMs for this whole podcast.
Yeah, there's also something to be said about like having some back and forth chatter while we're waiting on it. I
Yeah.
was popping in because like while you're doing most of the driving right now, I was seeing if we had any comments on LinkedIn or Twitch.
I didn't see it come up on my LinkedIn feed, so I don't know how this is getting promoted, but we'll
I
figure
saw
that
it
out.
come up as a notification from you.
Okay.
On like
Okay, great.
on my side of the
Oh,
world.
it shows at the top of my page now. It just wasn't before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Post comments to send notifications. Interesting. Yeah, it's my first time using StreamYard, so
Yeah, this is my first time without a more experienced host. So on the note of context switching, right? I've seen some interesting discussions in the last few weeks about like sort of this challenge that we're facing right now, where AI takes about 5 minutes to complete. It's right, like a useful enough step with a good enough thinking model. I'm finding that it's going to take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes before it's ready for me to review again. And 3 to 5 minutes is a terrible amount of time to context switch for.
yeah.
Like, it's not enough time to do anything.
Well, and
So
you
if
want
I-
to be able to interrupt it too, right? Like if it's
Right.
kind of going off on a tangent, you want to be able to stop and interrupt it. So you don't want to get too pulled away. Like,
Yeah.
I was joking with a colleague probably a few months back where I was like, I use AI so I can crochet more than I use it so I can produce more work. Like it's a tool to help augment my workflow, but not something I solely rely on.
It types for me more than it thinks for me.
Right. And that's kind of also where I found kind of starting off with like a handwritten plan, even though like using AI to kind of start off the plan is like, yeah, it's a decent place if you're not sure where to get started with it. But if you know where you want to get started with it, using it to kind of draft something comprehensive up can be particularly useful. Maybe I can like show one of the plans that I've been working on.
Sure, yeah. If this is still going, at this point, we should have written a plan, maybe.
Let me see.
Here, we'll bring you up.
Oh, cool. We're looking at it. So like, here's the prompt I gave it, right? Like this is a project. This is a project I started back in March before I picked up my current job, where when you click on, when you are applying to jobs, right, you're quite often including your resume along with the application. If there's links in your resume, you quite often want to know when people are clicking on those links and using that to curtail whether or not like you're including those in your future iterations of your resume. I used to go through and manually edit all of those links to make sure I had a trackable link involved. And so now this project just goes through and takes an uploaded resume, replaces those links for you, and then you can use that to apply out. I have a few friends that are like actively looking for work right now, and this has been making their life a lot easier in terms of just like, are they getting hits at all? And one of the ways I wanted to augment this tool was to sit down and have it actually crawl those links to be able to add additional context for like an AI agent to be able to make recommendations. So I started off with this handwritten prompt, right? Like it's very much like I didn't use AI at all for this. This is just very much like if I were a product manager at a company, I would write this up as part of like the core ticket that I'm implementing, right? Like, here's the context that you need. Here's the type of external content that we're considering. Here's the goal of the actual implementation.
Sure, yeah.
Desired workflows.
PRD to use the corporate lingo.
Yeah, and then the other thing I do too is I like to include some like, here's what I provided to you, right? Like, I don't want you to worry about implementing this structure. I don't want you to worry about implementing this structure. Here's the basic idea of what I want you to go and follow. So like these files deal with like an asynchronous task system. These files deal with like data models that I've already pre-generated. And then AI was able to actually return to me something pretty decent in terms of like, okay, like we were able to expand the existing link structure to include some metadata about when it was last crawled, the type of link that we're looking at, using kind of these different link content types, and then some basic crawl config, right? Because like if I'm going through and crawling it, I want to know how often I need to retry. I want to know, when do I give up? If I sit down and like want to do this again, maybe I want to make this configurable per user eventually. And then the types of tasks being queued into the system, some very basic directory structure. I asked it explicitly. It used to generate some code in here that like gave it an idea of what was working. And I explicitly asked it to take it out because adding code into this just felt like it was adding too much. And like me as somebody that was like, I just need a plan. I don't need the actual code. Like I trust you to kind of rederive the code on your own. But just keep that in mind as like you're going through, right? So we're able to kind of just do very simple link detection, resume processing, figure out scheduling, so on and so forth. So it covers a fair bit from just a very simple prompt, right? So what do we go from, like 70 lines to 225-ish in a project plan? And now I can actually take this and hand it off and be like, okay, let's go ahead and like try to get some of this implemented. In terms of like practically doing it, I would probably just have it start with like GitHub or LinkedIn or something like that, just because they're easy to start off with and just piecemeal it together. I would also do a commit on a branch before having AI do any of this. So.
Yeah, that's Cursor and Windsurf both had sort of like a checkpointing system built in, so I didn't have to use git commits so much. But with Claude Code, I am having to do the checkpointing myself.
Cline does checkpointing as well. I wouldn't fully trust it quite yet. Like I've had to go through and like actually explicitly ask it to manually revert some stuff. And so I've just found like a very good practice to be in is like actually committing as you're going through. You're like, okay, this works, this looks good. Let's kind of like move on to the next component. So like I might do like a feat, introduce async for tasks. And then because I like signing my code, where did Cline go? So now I can ask Cline to using @AI context implement the, let's see, let's do GitHub crawling logic. If you wanted to pop back over,
it is.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know when something interesting happens on this side, but it's very much just going to sit down for now and like, I made a oopsie. I started in act mode rather than in plan mode, and I wanted to start. I wanted to start in plan instead. What I like about Cline is it does interrupt that fairly well. Yeah. But yeah, let's take a look at where you're at.
So one just UX thing. I wish that it would start like somehow let me jump to the top of its output, because it has a whole bunch of output, and then But anyways, all right. So I actually think this plan is pretty good. I was reading it a little bit while you were talking. Based on my research, right, it's got sources. I wasn't actually aware of these sources, so I'm guessing these are more generic than the specific types of conferences that we speak at, which is making me realize a requirement that I didn't specify, which is I want it to not only find conferences, but I have to be able to mark the conferences that I'm actually interested in, because I don't care about all of them. So we're going to have it add that to the requirements. It wants a unified data structure. This seems reasonable. An acronym. That's nice.
Dev.events is another good one to start from.
Yeah, and there are a few. It'd be nice to have like a configurable list for it to pull from. Beautiful soup scrapey for HTML scraping. Right, like the DevOpsDays.org website sort of just has its own format. It'd be great to be able to scrape that. Data normalization layer. Yep. Database storage for persistence. We'll go with SQLite. API. All right. So should I have it record this plan and then we make edits, or should I tell it now to make some edits? I'm going to have it do this. Oh, it's going to start implementing it. I needed to choose no.
It's one of the challenges with Claude Code in particular that I found. Have you tried, out of curiosity, have you tried Claude Desktop?
I find it a lot more annoying. I mean, my primary development environment is on a remote machine, so the fact that Claude Code works at all is just amazing for me. Oh, it already did 3 steps. I just want an architecture plan that I can edit. Hopefully it will stop it. I'm hoping it will stop at that point, but I was not very explicit, so I'll get what I get. Okay. So it is proposing 4 components: scrapers module and a data layer. SQLite database for simplicity, upgradable to PostgreSQL. Nice choice, Claude Code. SQL Alchemy ORM. I'm not an ORM fan, but it'll probably make the code easier to read. Pedantic models. I'm not a Python developer, so I'm not totally familiar with these libraries. Export output iCal generator, RSS feed generator, simple web UI using FastAI. Okay, so maybe the first thing is just an aggregator that aggregates things into RSS feeds. And then you can make things behind that to make selections based on those RSS feeds, and that keeps this simple.
Well, if we're aggregating RSS feeds, I came across one existing one in open source recently that we might be able to use.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Let's see if I can track it down. It was in my for you on GitHub, so I might have to click through a little bit.
Okay. I mean, it's not just RSS feeds, right? We also want to be able to use Beautiful Soup and scrape HTML only sites. But yes, something that can aggregate RSS feeds into unified feeds is definitely going to be useful. All right. Wiki CFP RSS feed scraper, basic data model and database, simple CLI for manual scraping. I like it. Yes, give me a CLI. iCal export functionality. I don't think we need that until I've actually chosen the ones I care about.
Yeah, so fresh RSS was the tool I came across. I just dropped it in chat. So
okay. Okay. Set up projects. All right, next step. Set up project structure with DevBox, create data models and database schema, implement Wiki CFP RSS. All right, what was it called?
Fresh RSS. And it's literally advertised as a free self-hostable news aggregator written in PHP.
Okay, and then I also wanted it to we're taking this nice and slow. Like I did this kind of right, like on my layover last week, I did this a little bit at the airport, and the result I got, I think I was moving a little bit faster than this, but I think the result I got is not something that I would consider like maintainable or reusable. It sort of just gave me some garbage that got me to the result that I wanted in that moment. So I like this slow and measured approach. All right. It's much more detailed plan now. Write plan.md. It does fresh RSS. Is fresh RSS a Python thing, or could I have sold it to run it in a container? I should have looked that up. Yeah, we'll just run it as a container.
I assume they have a container. Did you give it the full URL of the repo? Because sometimes Claude will fetch that and like crawl through it.
I should have. I just told it to use Docker, and it didn't push back. I think this is a reasonable architecture, right? We're going to have a fresh RSS container, and then we can just actually log in and use the web UI to give it sources, which sounds nice. Then we have a UI. Parses and normalizes conference data, detects duplicates and enriches data, generates unified RSS feed output.
That seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, we can add HTML scraping later. SQLite database for processed conferences. Nice.
Well, we probably want the data storage to do something more like store the things I'm interested in. And then that way, when we do come across new ones, we can actually send out emails or things like that, right? Because that's the big thing is like, I want to be able to get an email when it's like, hey, like a conference you're interested in, their CFPs are closing in a week. So definitely something that we want to consider eventually.
Yeah, I'm thinking that would go behind this, right? So here, let's get style draw. We have fresh RSS. We have web pages. We have the scraper thingy. This is and then how do I, isn't it just you hold down space and you can, I guess not. Okay, and then we would have like CFP agent. And this would be a single, and then the CFP agent just needs to consume a single curated RSS feed. And then it can like email or whatever. And it could have a UI for managing like ones you're interested in. Something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I could have hand drawn.
I could have. Yeah. I need to get my iPad hooked up the way that you have yours for the screen sharing. Because I definitely Excalibur is so much nicer on an iPad.
We were talking about side quests. We were talking about user experiences that really wowed us during my offsite. And I kind of called out to just that seamless interaction where I was able to like plug my iPad in, share the screen, and then start using it like a whiteboard and just chef's kiss. Like, yeah, that was so satisfying.
Yeah. Someone got really annoyed in front of me because their AirPods weren't just automatically connecting. And the reflection I had was like, how magical is it that it just works so seamlessly so often that it's actually a really frustrating experience that one time in 1,000 when it doesn't.
Yeah.
Good job.
I've been on, I will not pay that much money for headphones. Like I've got a pair of like $100 shocks on right now, which I like for when I need to keep kind of awareness around me and not block everything out. I have then 2 pairs of like $40 headphones. This set I have had for, I want to say 7 or 8 years at this point. They've literally been, they've been under my hockey helmet. They've been they've seen their fair share of like battle tested scenarios, and they've been holding up pretty well. But I'll use them when I'm like gaming at night and just want to be able to like drown out everything else. And
yeah, no, AirPods are magical. I can't live without them now.
Yeah, I can't justify it. Sorry, Apple. Not sorry.
Okay. All right. We're gonna write this plan down. Let's create plan markdown. I do wonder if that extra scraper thingy is unnecessary, since really all it's doing is running Beautiful Soup and RSS. But hey, I like to over-engineer things. Why not? It's fun.
I mean, eventually what you could probably do is have a service layer that knows how to, what did this thing just do? Hold on. It modified my API. Damn it. The downside to AI, it made a change I was not expecting. It also made a change that was not in the initial ask. Oh, you know why? Because that's where they thought it was best to put the crawl config. I got it.
I'm curious. What's going
on? So I can't touch it right now because Cline's doing its thing.
Okay.
But I'll go and I'll grab it in a second.
I'm gonna ask my Claude for a Docker container, because I didn't want to try out Fresh RSS and see. I haven't tried this service before, so let's get it running and see how it works. And that might be a good stopping point since we're almost at an hour.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got comments. People are commenting.
We have one on there. And it's somebody that's advertising like us buying what do you call it?
Watches
Twitch viewers. Yeah.
Good. Yes, target the newbie streamers like us. Good job. Well done.
Well, their account was created yesterday too, so I very rapidly blocked them. So
thank you.
I'm on it. I got our back.
All right. This is a involved Docker Compose. It's got a health check. I guess that's good. Wait, it's got 2 health checks? Oh, one for Postgres and one for the... Okay. This is reasonable. This is reasonable enough.
I need to interrupt mine.
Oh, it's still using an old Docker Compose format with the version in there. I think that's deprecated. We're going to create an m.example. Yes, that's reasonable. This is a demonstration project.
So I noticed that Cline was going through and implementing SQL to like a migration SQL Go file effectively, which was like issuing manual alters against the database. And I'm like, we don't need this because Gorm is a little bit smarter than that, and I don't need it to be like the perfect migration scheme. I need something that will work pretty well.
Mm-hmm. All right, it's making its data directories. I'm okay with that. It's creating initial environment variables. I'm okay with that. I do love the verbs that it comes up with for itself. Liberty gibbeting. And it'll sometimes echo your own language, right? So if I say like search, it'll be like perusing.
Yeah. We can probably call the screen share here and kind of start working on a wrap up.
Yeah, I think so. I want to see if I can get this Docker container running. I should be just a couple steps away. Oh, it gave me a init script. I don't actually want that. I'm just gonna exit Claude Code here and see what it gave me. All right, what's in scripts? All right, let's edit this. What does this do? Just waits for it to be up and then outputs a bunch of information like a Helm notes file. Okay, Claude, I didn't ask for this. It's okay. Let's just run Docker Compose up.
Nice.
Okay, we have containers running. Can we access them? Where is it? It's 5432. No, that was Postgres. 8080. Okay, we have an installation step. I had to choose a language. I guess that's it. I guess we couldn't have configured that as an environment variable. Oh no, there's more.
So it at least got it up and running.
Yeah, but it didn't. All right, no, we're using Postgres. All right, well, I'm not going to worry about this with the 3 minutes that we have left. It's got one container running. It didn't configure it correctly. That'd be the next prompt. Is like, hey, set the environment variable so I don't have to do all this.
Yeah, get it to use SQLite. Don't worry about Postgres right now.
Yeah.
Mine is currently still going through because I asked it to move the config block, and it's moving the config block, which is kind of nice.
We've been on for an hour, right? We spent maybe 30 minutes chatting and 30 minutes coding. So in 30 minutes, I'm not disappointed with that level of progress, right? To have an architecture plan for a project of this scope.
Yeah.
And to have like an initial Docker container that I can start playing with. It's not bad for 30 minutes.
No, not bad at all.
I could have probably spent 15 minutes myself just reading all of the Docker compose options for fresh RSS, which I'm gonna now have to do. But
no, you aren't.
Right, I'm gonna make Claude do it, and that'll still take 15 minutes, but I'll type less.
Well, if you give it like a URL to an existing Docker compose file, right, you'll get it pretty quickly.
Yeah. That's actually an amazing point, right? I started with an empty repo. And in the past, right, with these other tools, I found that they're only useful when they have a ton of existing examples to pull from, right? Like, here's my entire organization's Terraform, copied the patterns that you see here. This, I was generating everything from scratch, and it's not garbage.
You want to see where mine got?
Yes, let's see it. That is actually one of my favorite things. Is I make some edits and I just tell it to look at the Git diff, to be like, I made edits. Look at the Git diff. And
so I'm doing it because they added like a config option to my GraphQL config side of the world, and it doesn't need to be there. And so I'm like, I cleaned up an unused config option. I want to say in GraphQL. And then I'm asking it to please be sure that the discovery logic handles YouTube link detection as well.
Nice.
Because it didn't initially consider that, even though it was in the initial requirements. They had blocks in there for like personal websites and things like that. So like now it's like, okay, like if there's a blog, well, now we can also deal with YouTube, right? Like that's definitely like code I could have added. Like I didn't need to ask the AI agent to go through and do any of it. But if there was other places, I wanted to make sure it took it into consideration, right? So
I'm definitely a lot less afraid of verbosity. I find the adjacency principle actually even more important now, but verbosity is not the sin that it once was.
When you say verbosity, what do you mean?
Just like being repetitive, or like having the same, right? Like being explicit versus concise. I used to, like to my own detriment, I used to try and program as concisely as I could, which as we know, as we get more senior, right, it makes it much harder to read the code when it's quote unquote clever. And so I've sort of just in seniority shifted a little bit in that and being more explicit and more just verbose sometimes. But I still have a tendency towards like typing less if that's an option. Whereas with the AI agent, I'm really optimizing for readability for both myself and for the future agents.
Yeah. So what I really like about this, right? Like, so I've got this all fairly well implemented at this point. I need to go and dig in to make sure it's doing what I want it to do. But this is kind of just a great example where it's like, I've got an established repository pattern for accessing data in a database using GORM. I've got my data structure that it was able to go through and update with the additional fields that I wanted. It was able to add some logic to that repository, so that way we know how to find which things are eligible for crawling today. And then it was also able to go through, like, plumb in the config, plumb in some GitHub link crawler. Again, need to sit down and like verify some of this. Just quick glance, it seemed like it might have been okay. But I'm sure yeah, so GitHub user, right? So this is coming from an API response. It looks like it's actually using like the old REST API and not the new GraphQL one that GitHub has to offer. It's got a scheduler, so that way it knows when to go through and schedule all the links for crawling. This is a generic handlers object, and I need to look at why it added this in particular. Like, this seems a little off to me. This CLI.command, right, very much from what do you call it? Where's this command even coming from?
You got a little farther than I did in half an hour, but that makes sense because you were giving it a project. You gave it a starting point with context. Yeah.
Yep. I gave it a whole lot more, right? Like, there was pre-established patterns in the repo to work from. I had a well-written prompt that actually was used to generate the initial design. Then I had the initial design doc that I had to go through and implement. Then it was a matter of just sitting down and like really just kind of guiding it in the right direction. It works pretty well also when you're like trying to learn a new code base, right? So if you're joining a company and trying to like find your way around, figure out what's where, great for kind of sitting down and doing that level of exploration. And then when you want to sit down and actually like put some more things, more pedal to the metal, so to speak, right? Like, it will actually help with that. I have gotten bit by it a few times, right? Like, I have gotten to the point where it didn't generate all the code I needed. It was actually on this like last feature request where there was a gap between, we have a service layer that deals with some GitOpsy stuff, and then we've got the application of the resource directly to the cluster. And so it did the change that applied the resource directly to the cluster, but it didn't go through the GitOpsy workflow as well. So there's things like that where it's like, it's a sharp edge where unless you know what you're looking for, and unless like, say like a code reviewer at your company gives you that guidance, like, you're not going to know, right? Like, you're still trudging your way through the trough, so to speak. And so definitely some sharp edges to keep an eye out for, but all around, like, I've generally been pretty impressed with some of the stuff I've been able to knock out. Like I said, I added that like music games bit just for funsies, effectively, on like a single, like, I gave it the prompt and then fell asleep and then woke up the next morning and it was implemented.
All right, so that's something we're gonna have to try in a future episode, is getting an application built automatically without touching it. Cool. Well, that's been the first episode of Single Pane. Any like closing thoughts you want to leave everyone with?
I get that it can be frustrating to get started. Like, we haven't even talked about, you know, some of the prompt strategies when it comes to like, hey, like, if I wanted to summarize something, this was actually something I learned over the weekend. Like, there's a component called chain of density, and that style of prompt that you give to a model makes it so that way you get better summarizations of documents, right? And like, that's an area that, you know, current systems really struggle with, because it's kind of got a bias towards whatever's repeated the most versus it actually being able to give you a meaningful summarization of a given document. So there's a lot there. It's a lot of like work to trudge through the trough, but you know, for $2 is where I'm at with my current implementation from that session, right? Like, next to nothing for me. So,
and just biting off small chunks, right? Like, you don't have to understand everything. You don't have to stay up to date with every new development. Just find the ones that are useful for you and keep an open mind.
Yeah, I started using Cline at the start of this job. I haven't really used many of the other ones that have come out since then, primarily because Cline has worked fairly well for me up until this point. And doing so would be a bigger distraction for me than a help, frankly. So cool.
All right. Well, where can people find you online, Mya?
I was actually thinking about putting these in banners. I am on LinkedIn as MJ Pitts, MJPITZ. And you can find me on GitHub there as well. Some other places you can find me as Miss Mya Jaye. But yeah, those are the two big ones that I'm on, GitHub and LinkedIn all the time.
Awesome. I'm Josh Lee Creates on GitHub. And we'll also post our LinkedIn's and Metaverses in the show notes.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
See you next week.